So I'm here in Bali and I brought quite a few books with me to read. I've been chilling, so I've not got too deep into them yet, but I'm halfway through this Elon Musk book, and I have to say, even though I can't give you a full review because I've not read it all yet, there's been some really interesting things, some business lessons that have come out of it that I've got to share with you even before I finish the book. I tell you as well, even if you're not an Elon fan, before I read this I was neither particularly a fan nor someone who really knew anything about Elon, but I did think I would be stupid not to read a book about the richest guy in the world who has started, not one, but 2, 3, 4 billion, well, multi-billion dollar companies. So there's got to be stuff to learn. Whatever your views on him are, whatever any prejudices may be, read the book because there is so much to learn. One of the things as well with this book, by the way, I don't normally like big books. I sometimes get a bit overwhelmed. I think it gives me a PTSD from being forced to read Lord of the Rings and all those kind of things back in the school. But even though it's, how many pages is this? This is 650 odd pages. It's lots and lots of short chapters, and it doesn't dwell on particular points for too long. I mean, one of the things I hate with biographies is pages and chapters all about the person's younger life, which doesn't really have any relevance or bearing in their later life. I mean, this book has a couple of short chapters on Elon's childhood years, and then really gets into the meat, his first business, his second business, and I mean, by the time you're a quarter of the way into the book, we're deep onto Tesla, we're deep onto SpaceX. But some of the things in no particular order that we learn about Elon and that we all should be applying to business. Number one, he questions everything. Now, Elon's very famous for his first principles thinking. Now, I won't go into great detail on that here, but I mean, ultimately, first principles thinking is questioning everything, going back to the basics of everything, taking nothing as granted and saying, well, we don't have to build on that because it's already there. Let's go one step back. And he really does question everything, no matter who built it before him, no matter who put it in place before him. If he thinks there's a better way to do it, he'll take it right back to the beginning. And that was a massive thing with SpaceX, for example. SpaceX was founded on the principles of being able to do things cheaper than anyone else had been able to do it. If you look at so many businesses out there, they have these blockers in place where we say we have to do it this way, and that might be using a particular piece of technology, it might be using a particular regulatory structure, it might be using an insane amount of staff. And when you look at why do we have to do it that way, normally the answer is just because it's always been done that way. And if you really break down behind it all of those things, you can very often see that it doesn't need to be done, that the costs don't need to be incurred, and that things can be done quicker, cheaper, faster, better. So I mean, that's a big Elon thing, questioning absolutely everything. Elon's also massive about removing red tape. Now, I mean, he works in, let's say, the most dangerous and the most regulated industries out there. I mean, building cars, sending rockets up to space. And he is absolutely famous for cutting through the red tape, for saying just because that safety rule's in place, it doesn't need to be in place. Just because that regulatory thing's in place, why does it need to be in place? Is it what he considers a stupid rule? Now, there's a balance to be struck here, because obviously, a lot of rules that people will consider stupid are there from a safety perspective. But, we all know that particularly in regulated environments that have been built by politicians, built by governments, built by civil servants, they have so many rules in place that are absolutely pointless. What red tape can you cut through in the same way that Elon cuts through that red tape? In the last couple of pages I was reading, there was something where Elon basically said to his team, go, do it now, build the tent. We're going to get a big fine, but we'll just pay the fine later, and at least it gets us done what we need to do now. This kind of ties in with the first thinking principles, with the cutting through the red tape. Very often, a fine for doing something is microscopic in the grand scheme of what you can achieve from it. I mean, obviously on a completely different scale to Elon, but I remember in my first business back in 2004, 2005, we were putting up some signage. This was my first successful lap dancing club back in Wakefield. We had to put a sign outside, and the planning permission would have allowed us to have a really boring sign. And the whole thing about my brand, it was loud, it was colourful, it was in your face, and I thought, how can we open a cool lap dancing club if we just have this crappy little sign outside? And ultimately, when I looked into it, if I'd have applied for the planning permission to get what I wanted, I would never have got it. It wasn't just a matter that it was going to take me months, if not years. I would never have got the permission. But if I just went and did it anyway, it would take them months, if not years, to be able to take the sign down, and I get some very little fines along the way. Now, I know some of you listening to this might be thinking, well, that's illegal, that's immoral. I mean, look, we've all got our levels that we're prepared to go to on things. That was never going to hurt anyone. It was never going to get anyone in jail. It was just going to cost me some fines and annoy the local politicians. And I thought that was a price worth paying to get the signage that I wanted to do. How many times are there situations like this in your business? I guess the day-to-day example we all look at is double yellow lines. Those yellow lines are there. We're not supposed to park on them, but sometimes it's just worth parking on there and paying the 30 quid, paying the 40 quid to get closer to your destination. Ask for forgiveness rather than permission is the message from there. But if Elon can break the rules and pay the fine, what can you do in your business too? Elon's very quick to fire people. Some would argue he fires people unfairly, unnecessarily and toxically. But I know that a big mistake I've made in my businesses over the years is to keep the wrong people in positions for too long. I've either made excuses that they're going to get better tomorrow, or I've wanted to be too nice to them, or whatever the reason is. As a business owner, I think when you know. How many times have we kept someone in a position trying to be nice to that person, and ultimately, as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And what actually really happens is you demotivate the rest of the business, you increase costs or you incur further costs, and ultimately you have to get rid of this person in the end anyway, and it's cost you more, it's done you more damage. Maybe you don't want to be as flippant as Elon when it comes to firing people, but I think like pruning a good bonsai tree, you've got to get rid of those bad eggs as and when problems happen. And I think, particularly in the UK culture, we leave people around for far too long. There's a balance to strike between getting rid of people too quickly and leaving them in place for too long. But I think when you know, and you've got to make those decisions, fire people and move on. Take a lesson from Elon's book.
Hey, Matt here, just interrupting myself to say, I know that you guys like the content I give you because you send me messages and emails about it, but I also know not enough of you implement it. So maybe what you need is a one-on-one strategy call with me for strategy, for consultancy, for advice, whatever it may be. Let's jump on the phone for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is all it takes for me to supercharge your business, to change your life. Click the link down below, book a call with me. I'll see you soon.
One of the things I've taken about Elon is that he never really goes looking for the money. Obviously, that might sound strange or crazy considering that he's the richest man in the world, but he's only ever chased big goals. He's never chased money for the sake of money. He's always wanted to do something life-changing, to change the world, to take a man to Mars, to proliferate the world with electric cars. And these have just always been big goals that ultimately have turned into money, but he was never chasing the money in the beginning. And I think one of the takeaways from that is that even if it is money that you're after, you've got to have a greater purpose, something that gets you up in the morning, something that you can use to inspire yourself, use to inspire your team. Because if it's only money for the sake of money that you're chasing, then that will get boring very quickly. Another well-known trait of Elon is his incredible ability to inspire people around him. He makes impossible deadlines get met, and he makes the unbelievable believable, and he does that by his ability to inspire people around him. If you're going to build a great business, if you're going to chase a great goal, if you're going to try and change the world, you need a team of people around you to do that with. And to get that team along with you, you've got to be able to inspire them. I think obviously one of the reasons Elon is so inspiring, he's normally right. He takes these unbelievable things and makes them believable. He takes these impossible tasks and he can just do them himself. He very much leads from the front. Yes, some might see him out there harshly barking orders, but he's barking orders about things he understands because he's got this great mission, this world-changing thing that he wants to get towards. As a business owner, as a leader, if you want to make the big money, if you want to build something, if you want to create something incredible, you've got to be able to lead and inspire your team and bring them along with you. And that's something that Elon's fantastic at doing. Elon has got the most incredible work ethic. Even by my standards of work ethic, I would argue he's got an unhealthy work ethic. In these big Silicon Valley tech companies, you often hear about people spending the night on the office floor. I mean, every second page in this book is about Elon sleeping under his desk, sleeping on a factory floor. It almost appears that he never goes home. He's working 24/7, and this is not just on one big business. This is on 2, 3, 4 of the biggest businesses in the world that he's simultaneously working on. He's going to his own birthday party and ignoring his birthday party and ignoring his guests and hiding in the bedroom, watching launches of SpaceX, talking to engineers in Tesla, whatever it may be. Work is what this man's all about. What can you take away from that? In a world which talks of snowflakey stuff, that talks of manifestation, the value of hard work is kind of ignored and forgotten, and anything great cannot be built without hard work. Some may decide that they don't want to do hard work in the way that Elon does. Maybe that's too much, but I guess it's all relative to the goals and dreams that you want to create. And if you want to do something life-changing, world-changing in the way that Elon does, then you're going to need to make some sacrifices and you're going to need to commit some serious work ethic towards it. Elon has got an unbelievable tolerance for risk. Some of the stories that you read about in here, you would argue it's a tolerance to risk that make things unsafe. And in Elon's personal life, he likes driving fast, he likes flying planes, he very much likes living on the edge. But from a business perspective, he's prepared to push everything to its breaking point, including his own personal finances. There was a point in here, I think it was in the late 2000s, when both SpaceX and Tesla were verging on bankruptcy. I mean, literally weeks away from bankruptcy, unable to make payroll. This was a guy who'd sold his last business for 100 million plus and had ploughed everything he got into these businesses. And he now didn't even have the money, his own personal money, to be able to put into the companies to make payroll that month. I mean, that is the absolute level of risk that this guy is prepared to take. But he takes it because he believes in his plan, he believes in his vision. He's going for something that he sees as greater than the pursuit of money. And it's that tolerance for risk that without huge risk, there will never be great reward. Another thing that Elon's famous for is his uncompromising standards and his impossible deadlines. Now, I say impossible deadlines almost, in inverted commas, because most of his impossible deadlines actually get met in some way, shape or form. We always hear about the expression of, to shoot for the moon, because even if you don't make it to the moon, getting to the stars is higher than getting past the clouds. But I think it's something that's never really applied enough in the real world and in the world of business. And Elon takes deadlines, things that people would expect would take a year to be done, and he demands that it's done in 3 months. And everyone says it's impossible, but he takes that back and says, okay, it may sound impossible, but what would we have to do to make it possible? And they break convention, they stay up all night, they find new ways to do things. And I guess ultimately everything is impossible until it becomes possible. Going back to the beginning of time, electricity was impossible. Going back before that, fire was impossible. All of these things are impossible, but someone at some point has to change the world. And Elon is the one that's changed it, not once, but twice, but tens and tens and tens of times. And he does that by setting these incredible deadlines, by having these unrelenting, incredibly high standards, and ensuring that everybody on his team has to pull along and play by the same rules as him. And the final thing that I can tell you about Elon from the half of the book that I've read so far is that he is obsessed about reducing costs. I say I find it impressive from a billionaire, but I think ultimately the reason that people become billionaires, the reason that people become multimillionaires, is because they're obsessive about money in a way that other people aren't. And Elon questions the price of everything. One thing when he was building SpaceX is he'd be given a cost for something, he'd be say, well, hang on a minute, why does that valve on a spaceship cost, for example, $10,000 when the same valve, the exact same valve on a car might cost $50 or on a washing machine might cost $20? And very often in these situations, there's no logical reason behind it other than the fact suppliers get to fuck you because they know you're in an industry where you've got the ability to pay a lot of money. I can tell you from a personal perspective, as someone who owns a boat, anything I buy on a boat costs me 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 times what it would cost to buy that same thing not on a boat. So whether that's an air conditioning system, whether that's a fridge, fixing a light bulb, just because it's on a boat and there's a narrower market of people to deal with it, and the fact that they know as a boat owner you've got a lot of money and therefore are probably prepared to pay a lot of money, you get charged a lot of money. And so many of the industries that Elon is in, it has that same problem. And what he does is he questions everything. He says, I don't care what the conventional price for this industry is. I want to understand what it really costs to achieve that. What can we do and break it down? And if we can't get someone else to supply us at a cost that's more acceptable, then we're just going to make it ourselves. And if you look at his businesses, they're actually all incredibly vertically integrated, where he creates his own supply chain so he can make a better product at a cheaper price, probably with a faster delivery point. But what can you take away from that? Take it to your business. What prices can you question that you've probably just accepted as is? And also, what little costs that have crept up in your business can you get away from? One thing I always talk about are like subscriptions, subscriptions and email addresses. I mean, I am dangerous for subscribing to things at £5 a month, $10 a month, and thinking, oh, that's good at the time. And you wake up a year later, 2 years later, and you're paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month for stuff that you don't use. You could probably cancel half of those and it wouldn't make the blindest bit of difference to you. Email accounts. I mean, my God, a few months ago, we did an exercise in our organizations and we had hundreds, and I mean literally hundreds, of unused Google accounts, Gmail accounts. They weren't costing big money, £3, £4, £5 a month, but £3, £4, £5 a month times 100 times 12 months, it adds up to big money. It's that obsessive attention to detail, that obsessive attention to cost that, I guess takes someone from being broke to being rich, takes someone from being a millionaire to being a billionaire. Someone else who was famous for this was Sam Walton, the owner of Walmart, built that organization on the ability to drive costs down on everything. As a consumer, we love Walmart because they supply products cheaper than anyone else supplies it, but they can only supply that product cheaper and still make a profit because internally as an organization, they've got an obsessive, almost pathological control of costs. They use paper cups in their meetings. All the staff have to fly economy, never business. Every single price is questioned. So what prices can you question in your business, and how can that put you on the road to being a billionaire like Elon? So just a few things we've learned from Elon there that we can all apply to our own businesses and our own logic. And like I said, just a few, because I am only halfway through the book, but if I get this finished in the next couple of days, I might come back and tell you what I've learned in the end of it too.
Hey, Matt here, just interrupting myself quickly to say thank you for listening to No Bollocks. But did you also know I've got another podcast, Stripping Off with Matt Haycox? Very different. No Bollocks is the quick daily business tactics that you need, but Stripping Off, we just do it once a week. We go deep, deep, deep with a CEO, with a celebrity, with an athlete, with an international inspiring character. We find out what makes them tick, we find out how they got to where they got to, and we find out how you can learn and benefit from them too. So jump on over to Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you listen to your content, and I'll see you on a future episode.